The 1990s challenged farmers with new technology and ambitious machinery, but not every engine could handle the workload. They were supposed to power through mud, heat, and endless hours of labor. Instead, a dozen engines became famous for breaking down at the worst possible moments. Here are the 12 worst 90s tractor engines ever made. Number 12, Deutz 1011. The 1990s introduced many engines that promised progress, but not all lived up to those expectations. Among them was the Deutz 1011 diesel, an air-cooled design that was meant to be compact and efficient. At first, it seemed to offer what smaller farms and municipal users needed, but on the ground it quickly earned a reputation that left many owners frustrated. Instead of becoming a steady partner, it too often became a source of worry in the field. Under hot weather, the air-cooled setup often overheated, causing unexpected shutdowns in the field. When discussing size, the displacement stood at 2,960 cubic centimeters, equal to 180.6 cubic centimeters inches. However, instead of being an advantage, this figure highlighted its limits. Many operators soon learned that while the compact design made it easy to fit in smaller tractors, the engine lacked the reserve strength to deal with heavier tools or rough soil conditions. As a result, what seemed like a useful and flexible idea often ended up being disappointing in real work. At the same time, power ratings did little to help its image. The four-cylinder version produced about 60 horsepower, which at first seemed decent for utility work. Yet, in real use, the delivery felt uneven, and the engine often struggled to maintain performance over longer hours. Farmers described it as an engine that could handle mowing or light loader jobs. But once the workload grew serious, its shortcomings quickly showed. People had high hopes for the tractor, but in real use, it often didn't do as expected. Drivers noticed it could stall when working in hard conditions. Torque was another problem. With about 140 pound-feet, it had some pulling power, but not enough for regular farm work. Because of this, the tractor often felt more like a compromise than a reliable tool. Many farmers quickly learned they had to work around its weaknesses to get any job done. Even though it was supposed to save money, the tractor often disappointed in daily work. Under very light use, it could deliver close to 20 miles per gallon, but once pushed harder, fuel consumption rose more noticeably. This left owners frustrated, since the savings they hoped for rarely appeared. In reality, what was promised as efficiency turned into another weakness. Even the top speed of nearly 15 miles per hour felt underwhelming. While it was never the main priority, this modest figure did little to make up for the other problems. Furthermore, the air-cooled setup, once praised for simplicity, often led to overheating in warm climates and noise levels that few found comfortable. In the end, the Deutz 1011 diesel proved that numbers alone cannot make an engine successful. Though it looked promising in brochures, in reality it left many farmers dealing with constant frustration. That is why it stands today as one of the least reliable tractor engines of the 1990s, remembered more for its troubles than for any lasting success. Number 11, Perkins 1106-D. Perkins had built a reputation for producing diesel engines that could be trusted in the field, but not every design from the company lived up to that standard. One of the more troublesome examples from the 90s was the Perkins 1106-D. On paper, it looked like the right step forward, a six-cylinder engine meant to power larger tractors and meet the growing demands of modern farms. With a displacement of 6.6 liters, that is 402 cubic inches, it was sized to handle bigger fields and heavier implements, carrying the promise of strength with the Perkins name stamped on it. The idea behind the 1106-D was to provide more muscle, but in practice, it often struggled to deliver the reliability farmers needed. Its inline arrangement offered balance, and its size placed it in the mid-range, intended to sit between smaller four-cylinder units and heavy-duty blocks. Output was rated at around 120 horsepower, but this figure often fell short in everyday work, leaving tractors underpowered for some of the heavier tasks they were meant to handle. Torque numbers also suggested strength, with about 300 pound-feet at working speeds. Yet operators frequently found that the engine did not maintain consistent pull under prolonged loads. On paper, the combination of horsepower and torque looked promising, but in real-world conditions, it often failed to meet expectations, making long days in the field more challenging than anticipated. But the real test was not in the brochures, it was in daily use. That was where cracks began to show. reports of premature cylinder liner wear surfaced far too often, raising serious doubts about durability. The fuel system was also a weak link, prone to developing issues that cut into valuable working hours. Instead of extending the tradition of worry-free performance, the Perkins 1106D sometimes left its operators dealing with breakdowns at the worst possible times. Even under normal workloads, the engine frequently faltered, leaving tractors struggling when they should have performed effortlessly. In farming, where uptime is everything, this kind of inconsistency quickly turned into frustration. Routine tasks could quickly turn into a struggle when the engine didn't deliver as expected. In farming, where uptime is everything, this kind of inconsistency quickly turned into frustration. The Perkins 1106D is now remembered more for its problems in the field than for the strengths it promised. It was meant to be an improvement, giving a mix of power and reliability that could be trusted. Instead, it often showed that even a skilled engine maker could make mistakes under tough conditions. Number 10. AGCO Sisu 620DS. By the early 1990s, farms were growing larger, and tractors needed engines capable of delivering both power and reliability. AGCO faced this challenge with the Sisu 620DS, a diesel engine meant to handle heavier workloads and modern implements. While the design promised a strong solution, many operators quickly found that it struggled to meet the daily demands of long fieldwork. Unlike some older, proven engines, this one often did not live up to expectations, leaving farmers hoping for dependability that did not always appear. The design tried to balance performance with simplicity. Its inline design gave a simple, compact layout that worked well for medium to large tractors, and the displacement measured 6.6 liters, equal to 402 cubic inches. This was supposed to provide the strength needed to pull heavier equipment, but in practice, the engine sometimes failed to deliver uniform work. Routine maintenance was not as easy as expected, and small repairs could become more complicated than operators liked. Operators soon discovered that the Sisu 620DS often struggled to keep tractors moving under heavy workloads. While the engine was rated at around 180 horsepower, it sometimes failed to maintain steady performance, with tractors losing momentum when working through thick soil or uneven ground. Torque, which reached close to 531 pound-feet, gave the impression of strength, yet its delivery was inconsistent across the RPM range, forcing frequent gear changes to keep work progressing. Fuel efficiency added another complication. Under normal conditions, many tractors returned roughly 11 miles per gallon, but heavier tasks could drop that number significantly. Long days in the field could become exhausting when the engine required extra attention or more fuel than expected, especially during planting or harvesting seasons, when consistent output was critical. Even routine operations revealed inconsistencies, turning what should have been steady work into a test of patience. Despite its ambitious design, the AGCO Sisu 620DS showed that size and numbers on paper do not always result in reliable operation. While it could manage basic tasks, extended use exposed weaknesses in durability and torque consistency. For farmers who depended on tractors to perform daily without interruption, these problems were a constant reminder that not all engines of the 90s lived up to their promise. Among the tractors of the era, this engine earned a place on the list of the worst, not because it lacked effort, but because it failed to give the steady support operators expected when the work was toughest. Thought that engine tested patience? The next one's turned every field into a challenge, like subscribe and watch it all go down. Number 9. FPTNEF. The 1990s saw some tractor engines designed to be strong and reliable, but not all of them lived up to the commitment. The FPTNEF, built for heavy work, quickly became known for being tricky and unreliable. Small problems could turn into bigger issues, and even routine jobs often became more complicated than expected. The engine's sensitivity and need for careful handling made it a challenge for anyone relying on it for consistent performance. The displacement measured 6.7 liters, equal to 410 cubic inches. This large six-cylinder block was meant to provide strength for plowing, seeding, and hauling. However, its size came with a downside: high maintenance and a tendency to falter if fuel quality or servicing schedules were neglected. In addition, the engine's weight made the tractor feel less nimble, which frustrated operators steering in tight spaces. While it could handle light work without complaint, in more demanding conditions, the engine often fell short. Farmers reported inconsistent performance, especially when running multiple implements or heavy loads. Horsepower hovered around 180 horsepower, and despite this high output rating, it required careful speed control management to avoid sudden drops in power, which made long days in the field more tiring. Ideally, the engine should have made draft work smooth, but in practice it showed underwhelming torque at low speeds. Torque delivery reached roughly 698 pound-feet, yet on sticky soil or steep inclines, operators had to constantly adjust speed and gear selection, which slowed work and increased fatigue. The turbo system added extra complexity, creating another point where things could go wrong. Fuel economy averaged close to 10 miles per gallon. For such a large block, this was expected, but in combination with sensitive maintenance needs, it made the engine feel like a fuel guzzler that demanded careful monitoring. Neglect or misuse could quickly exacerbate problems, leaving operators with reduced performance and higher operating costs. Small missteps in operation or delayed maintenance could quickly turn routine tasks into major setbacks. Even minor workloads sometimes exposed the engine's weaknesses, highlighting how its promise on paper rarely matched real-world performance. With servicing improvements, the FPTNEF stood out for its mixed reliability. While capable of performing under ideal conditions, it constantly reminded operators of its quirks. Its combination of high maintenance demands, uneven torque, and sensitivity made it a challenge for farmers who needed consistency. For those who relied on it daily, it became a symbol of the flaws of ambitious but poorly executed design in that era. Number 8. Kubota V3300-T. Every decade brings engines that seem powerful at first glance, but act differently in real world. And for the 1990s, the Kubota V3300 Turbo fit that description. Farmers often welcomed its compact design and hoped it would serve as a reliable heart for smaller tractors. What they discovered, however, was that the engine had clear limits, and those limits surfaced far too quickly in real use. The displacement measured 3,330 cubic centimeters, equal to 202 cubic inches. This placed it firmly in the light to mid-range category, intended to compete against other compact engines of the time. Kubota promoted it as a practical 4-cylinder turbocharged block, one that balanced efficiency with enough muscle for the daily jobs of smaller farms. That promise carried weight, but the delivery never fully matched it. The rated horsepower was about 64.1 horsepower. For lighter duties, such as mowing pastures, operating loaders, or handling transport runs, the number looked reasonable. Yet when farmers tried to push it into heavier work, such as plowing difficult ground or pulling bigger implements, the engine showed its weaknesses. Instead of feeling solid under strain, it gave the impression of being stretched thin, and that sense of fragility wore down trust over time. As expected, the tractor was meant to handle tough work, but it didn't always live up to that promise. The engine's delivery was uneven. Torque came in at near 155 pound-feet, which was supposed to give tractors a steady pull at lower speeds. In some conditions, it managed steady progress, but in others, it lacked the bite to dig in. Operators often noticed the tractor slowing sharply in sticky soil or on inclines, and that inconsistency made long working hours more frustrating than they needed to be. Fuel economy was one of the selling points, and in mixed use, the V3300 Turbo averaged close to 14 miles per gallon. While this was better than some larger engines, the advantage disappeared quickly. Once the engine was pushed hard, farmers found that the supposed savings on fuel costs did not outweigh the lack of versatility, since the tractor often needed longer hours to finish the same amount of work. In the end, the Kubota V3300 Turbo became an example of how an engine can be too narrowly built. It performed acceptably in light tasks, but failed to scale with the demands of broader farming operation. It is remembered not as a powerhouse, but as one of the weaker links in the tractor market. Number 7. New Holland Genesis. Big, heavy, and built for power, the New Holland Genesis looked like a machine ready to take on anything. Its 6-cylinder block promised strength, and its size suggested it could handle long hours of tough work with multiple implements. From the outside, it was impressive, solid, ambitious, and capable of dominating fields. But beneath the strong metal frame, the engine carried quirks that only became obvious once it was put to real use. The engine had a displacement of 7.5 liters, equal to 456 cubic inches. This large 6-cylinder engine was designed to provide strong pulling power for wide plows and heavy trailers. Its size suggested toughness and durability, but many operators found it difficult to steer, especially in tight fields or uneven ground. The weight of the engine added extra stress to the tractor frame, And with the turbocharged design, it demanded more care and attention than smaller or simpler engines. Even routine maintenance required more time, and farmers quickly noticed that ignoring small issues could lead to bigger problems over time. Farmers soon discovered that the Genesis 7.5-liter struggled even with normal farm tasks. It delivered 155 horsepower, which looked good on paper, but in real work, the power often came in uneven bursts. This meant operators had to constantly adjust throttle and gears to keep the tractor moving steadily, making long workdays more tiring. While lighter tasks could be handled fairly well, heavier jobs like pulling trailers or using multiple implements highlighted the engine's inconsistent performance. Keeping power steady under heavy load was another problem. Torque, around 520 pound-feet, should have given smooth pulling at low speeds, but farmers often noticed lagging response on sticky soil or hills. The turbocharger and fuel injection system, though advanced for the time, were very sensitive, and even small mistakes in maintenance could quickly reduce the engine's efficiency and reliability. In addition, fuel economy was about 9 miles per gallon, which made the tractor feel less efficient compared to other large engines of the decade. All these factors meant operators had to focus not just on the work, but also on constantly managing the engine, which added stress and slowed productivity. Even with proper care, New Holland Genesis remained a mixed experience. While it could handle heavy work when everything was in order, it constantly reminded users of its problems. Its size, power, and modern features were less important than its uneven performance, hard handling, and high maintenance needs. For those who relied on it daily, the engine became a lesson in balancing promises with real-world performance, showing that impressive numbers on paper did not always translate to dependable results in the field. Number 6. John Deere 6068-T. Farming in the 1990s demanded engines that could work all day without breaking down, but the John Deere 6068-T diesel was not that engine. Many farmers bought tractors with hopes of smooth, uninterrupted fieldwork, only to find a machine that struggled under prolonged use. The early mornings spent cranking and waiting for it to start became all too familiar for operators. The engine's displacement measured 6.8, 414, which suggested plenty of pulling power for mid-sized to large tractors. Yet, on the field, the liquid cooling system often failed to keep temperatures stable. Radiators were undersized, and coolant flow could not handle extended plowing, leading to frequent overheating. Farmers described stopping midfield to let the engine cool, losing hours of productive work in the process. Meanwhile, the engine often faced heavy loads, and its performance could be inconsistent under long hours of work. Its peak torque reached roughly 379 pound-feet. While this seemed adequate, running near that torque for extended periods put heavy strain on the crankshaft and connecting rods. Premature bearing wear and occasional rod knock became common complaints among owners. Repairs were costly and often repeated, with no guarantee the problem would not return. This made many operators wary of pushing the engine to its limits for fear of breakdowns. Fuel delivery caused its own headaches. The injection pump sometimes failed to spray consistently, resulting in incomplete combustion. Pistons would accumulate carbon deposits, piston rings could stick, and compression dropped, leading to higher oil consumption and weaker performance. The engine produced roughly 165 horsepower, which on paper seemed strong, but real-world operation exposed weak points. Oil passages were narrow, and the pump struggled under heavy load, accelerating wear on moving parts. Head gaskets were another critical issue, often failing under heat stress and allowing coolant to mix with oil. Once oil quality dropped, bearings quickly suffered damage, sometimes leading to total engine seizure. Operators remember the constant stress of watching temperature gauges, listening for strange noises, and coping with slow power when every minute counted. The John Deere 6068-T diesel tested patience more than it worked as a reliable engine. Even those who followed strict maintenance schedules had to do repeated repairs just to keep it running. Ultimately, the engine failed to live up to its promise of strength and reliability. Rather than being a dependable partner in the field, it required constant attention and frequent repairs, leaving operators frustrated and exhausted. The John Deere 6068-T diesel stands as a clear reminder that even well-known brands can produce engines that struggle under heavy, unrelenting workloads. Number 5. John Deere 6059-T. When it comes to mid-sized agricultural engines, the John Deere 6059-T diesel was often seen as a reliable choice. At first glance, it looked solid, built to handle tough work and long hours without complaint. Its six-cylinder design promised steady power, and its size suggested it could tackle a wide range of tasks. But as the engine got to work, its quirks started to show, testing the limits of what it could really do in the field. The engine's displacement was 5,900 or 359. In practice, the engine's performance didn't always align with expectations. One of the primary concerns was the engine's cooling system. Despite being liquid-cooled, the system struggled to maintain optimal temperatures during extended operations. Overheating was a common issue, especially during prolonged field work, leading to increased maintenance needs and potential engine damage. Lubrication also posed challenges. The oil pump, while functional, sometimes failed to deliver consistent pressure, especially under heavy loads or when the tractor was operating near its top speed of 18 miles per hour. This inconsistency led to increased wear on engine components, necessitating more frequent oil changes and inspections to prevent premature failures. Fuel delivery issues were another hurdle. The mechanical fuel injection system, while straightforward, was prone to clogging and wear. Contaminants in the fuel could easily disrupt the delicate balance required for efficient combustion, leading to reduced power output and increased fuel consumption. Torque, a critical factor for agricultural engines, was approximately 343. While this figure seemed adequate, the engine's design sometimes led to uneven power delivery, affecting tasks that required consistent torque, such as plowing and hauling. Cold starts were particularly troublesome. In colder climates, the engine often required multiple attempts to start, leading to increased wear on the starter motor and battery. Even with glow plugs, achieving a reliable start in low temperatures was not always guaranteed. Despite these challenges, many operators found ways to keep the John Deere 6059-T diesel running smoothly. Regular maintenance, timely repairs, and a proactive approach to potential issues helped mitigate some of the engine's shortcomings. While this engine offered certain advantages, its performance was not without flaws. Farmers who invested time and resources into understanding and addressing these issues could extract value from the engine, but it required a level of dedication and attention that not all were prepared for. Number 4. Cummins C8.3A. In the heart of the fields, a tractor's engine is the lifeline of every operation, and reliability can make or break a day's work. The Cummins C8.3A engine, common in the 1990s, was designed to deliver steady power and long-lasting performance. But in practice, it frequently let the hopes go down, leaving tractors sidelined and work delayed when it was needed most. This diesel unit featured a turbocharged, liquid-cooled, inline six-cylinder layout that appeared formidable on paper. Its displacement was 8.3 liters or 505 cubic inches, which suggested strong pulling power for heavy equipment. However, under prolonged use, the cooling system struggled to keep temperatures within safe limits. Radiators and coolant passages frequently became overwhelmed during long plowing sessions or intensive harvesting, forcing repeated stops to avoid overheating. These delays drained valuable daylight and hampered productivity for farmers counting on reliability. Mechanical weaknesses added to the problems. The crankshaft and connecting rods often showed early signs of wear under sustained heavy loads. Premature bearing failure was common, and in some cases, rod knock developed, leading to costly repairs that could sideline tractors for days. Despite its high peak torque, estimated at 625 pound-feet, the engine often failed to maintain consistent performance when pushed hard in real farm conditions. Fuel delivery issues further compounded operator frustration. The high-pressure caps injection system, designed for precise combustion, frequently clogged or delivered uneven fuel spray. This caused carbon buildup on pistons and valves, sticky rings, and reduced compression. Oil consumption would rise, leaving tractors struggling even during routine tasks. Over time, operators noticed declining engine power and efficiency, especially in the hottest months when reliability mattered most. Head gasket failures were another recurring problem. Heavy workloads sometimes caused gaskets to blow, allowing coolant to mix with engine oil, quickly breaking down lubrication. In severe cases, this led to engine seizures, requiring expensive overhauls that often solved the problem only temporarily. The engine's top speed was modest for its class, reaching approximately 25 miles per hour, which was sufficient for most agricultural tasks, but offered little margin for high-speed travel between fields. Its horsepower was rated around 245 horsepower, which looked reasonable on paper but frequently felt insufficient under continuous heavy workloads. Mileage also fell below expectations, with tractors burning more fuel than advertised, adding to operating costs and overall dissatisfaction. Over time, farmers and mechanics alike began to regard the Cummins C8.3A as a cautionary example of ambitious engineering gone wrong. What should have been a reliable workhorse became a source of repeated maintenance, downtime, and frustration. Despite its potential, this engine struggled under real-world farm demands, reminding operators that even well-known brands can produce machines that fail to deliver when it matters most. Number 3, Detroit Diesel Series 60. Modern tractors in the 1990s promised more power and smarter technology, but not every engine delivered on that promise. The Detroit Diesel Series 60, with DDEC3 electronic control, was one of those engines. Farmers expected a strong, reliable workhorse, yet many found it temperamental and frustrating in the field, often leaving tractors idle when they were needed most. The engine was built to be powerful, and its displacement was 12.7 liters, 774 cubic inches, which suggested it could handle heavy loads easily. On paper, this should have made it ideal for large tractors and demanding farm work. However, its reliance on complex electronics often became a problem. Sensors, wiring, and the DDEC3 control system could fail, causing unexpected shutdowns that left tractors stranded during critical tasks. In terms of performance, the engine produced around 365 horsepower. While this seemed impressive, farmers often found strength delivery uneven. Under continuous use, the engine could hesitate or fail to maintain steady output, especially during long hours of field work. It became clear that high horsepower alone did not guarantee reliable performance in tough conditions. Torque also showed gaps between expectation and reality. With about 1,025 pound-feet, the engine should have pulled heavy implements easily, yet continuous strain revealed weaknesses in both the drivetrain and electronic monitoring. Under heavy workloads, the engine could behave unpredictably, forcing operators to watch gauges closely to avoid damage and downtime. Fuel efficiency was another challenge. Detroit Diesel promoted the DDEC3 system as a way to improve mileage, but when running, consumption often exceeded expectations. Tractors burned more fuel than farmers anticipated, adding to operational costs and frustration, especially when fuel budgets were tight. Even the cooling system, designed for long field hours, had its limits. Overheating or coolant leaks were reported during sustained heavy work, requiring unexpected stops and repairs. Combined with the electronic issues, this made the engine more complicated to manage than simpler diesel designs of the same era. Ultimately, the Detroit Diesel Series 60 DDEC3 showed that advanced technology does not always equal reliability. Despite high power, strong torque, and modern controls, it often left farmers dealing with maintenance headaches, electronic faults, and unpredictable performance. For many, it became a cautionary example of how promising engines of the 1990s could end up frustrating the people who depended on them the most. Number 2, Massey Ferguson Perkins 1660-T. During the 1990s, tractor engines were evolving rapidly as manufacturers sought to combine greater power with improved efficiency. Among these developments was the Massey Ferguson Perkins 1660-T, an engine that promised reliability and steady performance. Yet during actual use, it often faced limitations that affected its overall effectiveness. The unit used a turbocharged, liquid-cooled four-cylinder design, and it could feel strong when starting light work. Under continuous heavy use, however, it often overheated, forcing farmers to take breaks to prevent damage. Its displacement, 6 liters, which is 365 cubic inches, suggested enough strength for medium-duty tasks. Yet the cooling system was sometimes overwhelmed during long hours of plowing or hauling. This gap between expected and real-world performance caused repeated delays in daily operations. Even though the tractor had a decent frame, the way it delivered strength often caused frustration. Machine handlers noticed that while the engine could handle short bursts of work easily, it sometimes lagged under steady, heavy loads. Its horsepower, around 85 horsepower, seemed enough on paper, but in practice, uneven delivery made continuous work more difficult. Farmers often had to slow down or adjust implements to avoid overloading the engine, which reduced overall efficiency. Pulling power was another weak point. Torque, listed at roughly 235 pound-feet, offered some strength for lighter implements, yet heavier attachments caused stalling or slow response. This meant the engine was not as versatile as its reputation suggested. and operators had to take extra care during demanding tasks to prevent breakdowns. Simple pulls could become tricky, as the engine struggled to maintain strength and reliability during longer periods of work. Fuel efficiency and speed also fell short of expectations. While light work could achieve decent mileage, intense field tasks increased fuel consumption noticeably. Its top speed, about 15 miles per hour, was modest, which limited flexibility when moving between fields, and long periods of use often made the engine louder than expected. Promises of strength and reliability didn't last long for the Massey Ferguson Perkins 100-660-T. In the field, cooling troubles, shaky power, and high fuel use made work harder rather than easier. What was supposed to be a dependable engine turned into a constant headache, cementing its reputation as one of the 1990s more problematic diesels. Number 1. Caterpillar 3126. When it comes to medium-duty diesel engines of the mid-1990s, the Caterpillar 3126 often stood out for its strong reputation and solid design. Operators hoped it would handle tractors and light trucks with ease, offering a balance of power and reliability. Its inline-six layout promised smooth running and enough strength to tackle different jobs, but using it for long hours revealed that it required more attention than many expected. The engine had a displacement of 7.2 liters, which is 442 cubic inches, giving it the size to move mid-range equipment comfortably without feeling too heavy. The cooling system could become tricky during long hours in hot or dusty conditions, and operators needed to adjust speed or take breaks to keep temperatures under control. In addition to power delivery, torque played a major role in daily operation. Operators relied on the engine's pulling strength, which reached around 700 pound-feet, to handle heavy loads steadily. Some users found that this torque could feel uneven on steep hills or under full loads, making tasks like plowing or hauling more tiring than expected. Because of this, regular oil inspections and careful maintenance were essential to avoid premature wear and keep the engine operating safely. However, the fuel delivery presented its own problems. The mechanical injection system was simple, yet even tiny dirt particles or small wear could disrupt combustion. This caused rough operation, lower power, and higher fuel use. Cold mornings added difficulty, because starting the engine below freezing often took several tries, stressing the starter and battery. Careful throttle control and planning made a big difference in preventing damage. Keeping the engine properly lubricated was important. The oil pump worked most of the time, but maintaining steady pressure during long periods of heavy work required careful monitoring. Running the engine near its maximum output of 355 horsepower for extended stretches increased strain on the system. So, experienced operators balanced workload and throttle to reduce unnecessary stress on bearings, cylinder liners, and other internal parts. Despite being capable of solid performance, the engine demanded careful handling to reach its potential. Regular checks, oil changes, and mindful operation helped operators get the most out of the engine, but it still had recurring overheating, uneven torques under heavy loads, and sensitive fuel injection that often caused rough running. Overlooking these minor issues often led to frustration, increased maintenance, or unexpected downtime. The Caterpillar 3126 from the 1990s shows that even engines with strong reputations can have clear weaknesses. When treated properly, it could handle tough jobs effectively. Yet its quirks, temperamental behavior, and these persistent problems earned it a place among the worst tractor engines of the 90s. Not every engine from the 90s was a reliable workhorse. These 12 caused plenty of headaches for farmers, from high maintenance to unpredictable performance. If you've had a bad tractor experience or know of a model that belongs here, share it in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to see more stories of tractors that struggled and the lessons they left behind.